All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Cloud Experts Unleashed. And today I'm joined by Mark Tarian. He is with Navigator TMS, and he has a great story about how they chose xByte Cloud. And this has got to be one of my favorite stories because it's got real numbers in it, guys. Some excellent statistics to help you make a decision. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be with you.
And so, why don't you give us about a 30-second to minute just overview of what is Navigator TMS?
So Navigator TMS is a transportation management software system. Every trucking company, various sizes, but there's so much technology driving the trucking industry these days. And when we got these clients onboarded roughly 10 years ago, technology was just becoming something that the trucking industry was going to embrace. Certain pressures with trucker hour conformance tracking, various things were really starting to get pushed in, whether they liked it or not. Most trucking companies and dispatchers were still doing the telephone and the whiteboard dry erase scenario. Some had spreadsheets. If you were really sophisticated in the trucking space, you had an access database. And our original client with the Navigator system was based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they had an access database running on an internal office server, got flooded once, crashed a lot.
Oh, no.
They couldn't access it remotely. I mean, all the stories you would hear. So, they were kind of at the forefront in their world. Small company, 5 guys, a little corner office, and, doing less than $1 million a year. And so we started working with them back in 2016. And moved them to cloud, obviously, and Cold Fusion Cloud, our previous host, we did that, and we just grew and grew and grew, and so did they. And over a period of time, that software system we architected to support lots of other clients in addition to just the single client that it started with. And that's what the Navigator TMS transportation management system became over time. And then we kind of outgrew our previous host. The performance just wasn't quite there. The speed wasn't there. We had clients coast to coast, needed a little bit more robust back end to be able to have support, from North Carolina to California and everywhere in between. So, and then downtime, occasionally would creep in. Which is never a good thing when you're trying to run a 24/7 business like the trucking industry is. So we started searching around, and that was our original first foray with xByte. We've now moved some of our other systems there as well, but focused on the Navigator system. We knew we wanted to expand not just the physical hardware system, but also how we had the configuration running. We knew we wanted to go with a dedicated database server, and then we wanted to load balance the front end with multiple web servers. And so the xByte team really helped us figure out the best way to do that. So that's what brought us to xByte and the solution that they brought. That would be third quarter of 2023, and we're in ongoing work with that. We just spun up a dedicated archival file server so we could take some load off of the front line servers. So yeah, xByte's a great partner with not just Cold Fusion, but also server architecture, web server optimization, and how to structure those things. So it's a really high performance situation for someone that's running thousands of transactions per day.
Yeah, but we deal with a lot of companies who are doing tons of transactions, and they need that. They need that redundancy. They need it high availability. They just need it working, and it can't go down. And so it's exciting to hear that you were able to do that for you. Now, I do want to kind of touch on a couple points of the story that you and I talked to before the show. The one piece, and I'll just highlight this for a second for anybody listening. If you are on a bus, on a shuttle, if you're anywhere, don't hesitate to talk to people. Because what Mark didn't tell you is his whole story of Navigator TMS came from a discussion on a shuttle with other people. They just started talking. So if you are a developer or in that mindset to create stuff, talk to people, because opportunities will present themselves in the strangest ways.
Right.
So yeah. So just one little tidbit for you guys. We won't go into the full story here, but amazing story. If you ever had a chance to talk to Mark,
maybe we'll do a follow-up one day.
There we go. Maybe a follow-up one day. Great story. And then I want to take a second and go back to your decision to go to xByte Cloud, because we were amongst several people that you were talking to, and you put it in. You wanted to do a performance test because you wanted to see it really who can deliver, because your customers demanded high performance. So can you talk to us about the test and
Sure.
what you set up?
Great question. So we'd been with our previous host for about 10 years, and they were great, but we knew we wanted to make some changes, and we knew we had plans for the Navigator system that would support a large number of clients from coast to coast. And we're currently doing that, but we knew that change is hard. Changing hosting companies is not something you do, on a whim. So we knew we wanted a solid foundation that we could grow from. So like any business that's worth their salt, we did research, narrowed it down to 2 or 3 really high performing options, xByte being one of those. We had some connections, on a personal level with some people that had moved to xByte recently. But we also researched other Cold Fusion dedicated hosts. Cold Fusion is all we use. Cold Fusion and SQL. It's all we do on the custom software side. So we knew we wanted a very experienced Cold Fusion development partner and hosting partner. So the list was fairly narrow at the high end of the performance metric, and we ran and actually moved some systems to some test environments in each of those instances. And some were cloud-based, 100% cloud, and it's a little hard for them to describe what exactly that means. Cloud can be dedicated virtual servers. So you actually have dedicated resources that, to me, looks more like a real server that we're used to, as opposed to a nebulous, expandable cloud thing that nobody actually says how many processors you have and how much storage do you have and where does it reside and things like that. So knowing that we were building a system that needed to be very fast and responsive on a transactional basis, it had to be very high performant, and we like the architecture and speed performance that xByte gave us with the dedicated server environment that has over the last 16 months been just an epic performer.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so for those on our seats waiting for the number I was going to give them about the statistics, so what Mark did go into, and I'll kind of, you can correct me if I'm wrong on these numbers or this number, but he did compare our private cloud that we've created against an Azure cloud, and we came in at 20.7% faster performance. And that's a lot of it. In other podcasts, I've talked about our sister company, xByte Technologies. What they allow us to do is we get to have cutting edge performance on our servers at a fraction of the cost because we're partnered with a major distributor out there. So that's a big advantage that we have. And then we get to our customers. So it was exciting to hear an actual independent study where Mark wasn't deciding, he hadn't already decided on us, but he did the test. And then at least talking to our guys here, not only did we do that test and we came out ahead, and then we helped you and gave you suggestions to further tune stuff to help the environment be even faster.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's, I think, one of the intangibles that we see with the team that you've developed there at xByte. We've known some of those guys for a long time, but having those additional resources for us, we're really good at what we do on the front end, but we need someone that's really, really good on the back end that can manage and sweat the details on, whether it's software updates or optimization of structure or optimization of caching or analysis and review of log files that you guys see on a weekly basis that we just don't. So having that backup is invaluable to us.
Now, you work with, and thank you all for the amazing positive comments. And you work with Cold Fusion a lot, and that's kind of helped this business grow. What aspect of Cold Fusion is what draws you to it? Is it how fast you guys can develop? Is it how bulletproof it is? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what draws you to Cold Fusion?
Yeah, great question, Ryan. I mean, it's all of those things, but I'm not a developer. We have a team of guys that do that and have more than 20 years experience with Cold Fusion. We kind of came by Cold Fusion, I would say accidentally, when we bought the company named Thin Air Web in 2007. They were at the time a dedicated Cold Fusion shop, and we knew nothing about it. But having acquired assets and content management system and various other things that were all architected in Cold Fusion, we pretty quickly needed to become not experts, but at least fluent in Cold Fusion. And the more we worked, the more interesting it became and the more lucrative I think it became. We would find clients that had something built in Cold Fusion and then their developer went away. So we actually targeted looking for clients that had Cold Fusion, and they've become very sticky over time. We have clients going back 15 years that continue to work with us because of our dedication and optimization of our Cold Fusion resources internally and externally. So and reinforced by the fact that it's owned by Adobe now and the resources that Adobe has committed to in their future development timelines, and they've proven that out. There were some questions I think early on, it's like, Adobe's going to buy it and then kill it, and it's been the exact opposite, where Adobe just continues pouring more and more resources and more feature sets into Cold Fusion as they go forward. So I think we've made a great decision dedicating our development resources to Cold Fusion. It's just been really great for us.
That's great to hear. Now, something I didn't ask you about in the pre-show, so I'll kind of put you on the spot a little bit here. With the migration, so we've talked about the decision to go with xByte Cloud and the performance gains since then. But I talk to customers on a lot of these stories. I want to ask them about the migration process, because at least talking to other companies, there's always a fear with a migration that something can go wrong, especially because this was your first experience working with the company. You said you'd worked with some of the guys in the past, but you're moving a software that you guys had running on with the other provider for 10 years. What was the emotional experience of deciding to go through the migration? What were did you have any fears that something may happen? And kind of, did we do anything to help you out with that?
Yes, we could not have done it without xByte and your team. And we've been through various upgrades and migrations from homegrown physical servers in a small office at the end of a T1 line through a co-located location at an ISP that had fiber in the basement, to going cloud with a hosting provider, and all those incremental things. And especially when you're working with a system that has not necessarily 24/7 activity, but you really have to carefully manage through a cutover date where the old system becomes dormant and the new system becomes live with no loss of data. And anybody that's gone through that process knows there's there's potential for issues, but lost sleep and headaches and all the other things that might go with that. So um, lots of phone calls, lots of emails, but the whole team, our side and the xByte side, it was a great collaboration, and we pulled it off without a hitch. So I don't remember the specifics, and that's probably a good thing. It was a year and a half ago now, so nothing
There's no
stands
pain that's
out.
still with you.
Yeah, so you remember those painful points in your life, whether they're work related or falling off your bicycle. Um, so yeah, it obviously went smoothly because nothing stands out as far as that. But we've gone through a few of those, and obviously planning and testing and those kind of things helps through that process. But the xByte team was definitely a critical component of that smooth transition from one hosting company to another hosting company with a very sophisticated system.
So obviously no downtime, it sounds like, or
Zero.
okay, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I know that's as I talk to companies, that's a lot of their fears, that there'll be a downtime and there'll be, as you said, data loss. And to hear
Right.
that didn't happen, and you have no memory of the process because it just happened. It went smooth. It's awesome to hear.
Yeah, there's there were various components associated with that. One is, how do you manage the front end so you can cut it over quickly, right? So during that process, one of the initial steps was to bring Cloudflare into the domain management part of that process, so that we could run the DNS, manage it quickly, make changes, and have the internet respond quickly. We also managed the load balancer from the Cloudflare system. So, it was a lot of components that were just part of that planning process, where it was step by step by step, and each one had to pass testing before we would move to the next step. So we didn't try to do it all on a Saturday night. It was just a very carefully orchestrated transition, and obviously keeping in touch with the clients and making sure that they were aware that there was a big change coming, and to be on the lookout for anything interesting. But like I said, nothing stands out, so it must have gone really smoothly.
Yeah, and a customer I spoke with recently, he was mentioning how as you do that planning and you cross each step, it builds more confidence that things are going to go well. So other
Yes.
team members who may not have the same relationships, at least in his organization, they were kind of afraid, like, they actually said, there's no way a company will do this. There's no way they'll do this. And just we succeeded at every step. And so it sounds like it was something similar, but without the fear from you guys. But
Exactly.
every step, we've kind of built that confidence in there. Now, since then, we've come in. Of course, you mentioned the cold fusion expertise that we have, that we help tune things for cold fusion. And then on the hosting side of things, this is interesting. I was talking to our CTO about this beforehand, and he mentioned that you needed you wanted to offload some of the file management to another server, mm-hmm. and that served two purposes. One, of course, just offloaded that, so you weren't doing that, and so you can kind of get some power back into the web servers. But it also cut down your costs. And it's something interesting for a provider to recommend a solution that actually drops your costs, because we could recommend that you keep increasing the size of each of your load balanced servers. Right. But no, we recommended you reduce that cost and not do that anymore, and have a third server out there that handles that handles all the files.
Right. So yeah, it's just part of the growth process, right? You expect a business to continue to grow, and the way that system runs, there's a lot of documentation stored with each transaction. Some of it's externally generated and stored. Some of it is internally generated PDFs, documentation, and all that has to be stored locally. So with load balance servers, you're paying for frontline storage times however many load balance servers you have, 2 or 3 or whatever it happens to be. So that frontline storage, it can be fairly expensive. However, what we needed was a way to keep documentation for 7 years for, tax purposes or whatever. But we wanted to make sure the system had a full archive of the historical activity now going back 9 years that wasn't going to take expensive frontline storage, because anything more than 2 or 3 years old could be just archived, available on an as needed basis, but didn't have to be one click available from the front line. So yeah, with a bunch of brainstorming, your guys came up with a great solution for us to offload 5 years worth of archival data. We've coded it in such a way due to recommendations your team made, so it's still one click accessible. It just looks for local first. If it doesn't find it, goes to the backup, and it's there. But to the end user, it's completely seamless. And for us, it really optimizes the resource availability, really freed up the cost and the performance on the frontline servers.
It's great to hear that partnership. So others listening, lean on your partners. I mean, our team is great to collaborate with to come up with some of these solutions. And it's a common thread I see with a lot of our customers is where they leverage our expertise and bounce ideas off them. We're like a chat GPT out there. You kind of hit us up and we'll bounce ideas off for you. Be the experts.
Well, it makes perfect sense, right? We know what we know about our world, but you guys have experience and feedback from lots of different scenarios. So you get questions about how to do this or that or something else. So you have a wealth of knowledge that we'll never be exposed to because we only have our little world that we know about.
All right. So Mark, Navigator TMS thank you very much for telling us the story. And maybe one day we'll revisit the actual story of your shuttle bus experience and have everyone. But if there are companies out there and they want to learn more about Navigator TMS, obviously they can Google it. But what is your website? How can people find you directly?
Yeah, they can find us at navigatortms.com.
That's so easy. You guys are smart to name it that way. Yeah. All right, Mark. Well, thank you very much for joining us this week. And as I said, it's great to hear your story, and I love to hear about how great xByte is. So it's a win-win.
A win. Yeah. Thanks very much, Ryan. Appreciate your team.